Greetings from Tokyo, my dear friends. This is Daisuke, and I very much hope that this video finds you well and in very good spirits wherever you are in the world. And now we are into the month of September 2020 here, and I wanted to start some conversations about one of my favorite genres of cinema, namely the horror genre. Now, I've spoken a little bit about the horror genre here and there and elsewhere on this channel. And I've spoken maybe somewhat about some specific works of the horror genre that really mean a lot to me, and also filmmakers that are connected with the genre that, again, mean quite a lot to me. But I do have I have a soft spot in my heart for this genre because, as I've mentioned before, this is a genre that, or an area of cinema that I have loved ever since I was a little kid. I know that the genre is not for everyone, and I don't expect it to be for everyone. And I know a number of people have expressed to me already their dislike for this kind of cinema, and I completely understand that. And so my intention with this and future similar videos is not meant at all to try to persuade you otherwise. It's just meant for me to just try to express in my own way how I feel about particular works. And so what my plan is just going forward, I will try to make some videos alongside the other videos that I'm currently making, where I will try to talk about certain films, specific horror films that have really meant a lot to me for one reason or another. And so going forward, I'll try to do that and make it its own little series, as it were. And maybe if I can keep this going until Halloween, which is, of course, at the end of October, then maybe this might be an interesting way to sort of celebrate the season of Halloween going forward. And so there are a number of films that I've always wanted to talk about on this channel, but I've never had the opportunity to do so. But I'll see what I can do going forward with that, and hopefully they might be some videos that you might be interested in. I hope so, and if not, then no worries. Of course, there's nothing wrong with that. But hopefully, for those who are interested, we might have some conversations going forward. And with that, I'd like to talk about this particular film, which is one that I really love, and it's from 1990, and it's one of those great examples of films that really scared me as a kid, and scared me for reasons that I wasn't anticipating. And it was something that was a surprise, something that I was expecting to be so much fun, but I wasn't expecting it to have this much impact on me. And to the extent that even now, when I see it, I'm just really chilled to my very core. There are some scenes in particular that are still effective to this very day. And especially recently, in the recent years, there have been some great releases of this film on physical media. And one of those releases was from a few years back from Scream Factory, which is the version that I have. It's this film directed by a very interesting filmmaker called William Peter Blatty. And it stars, among other great performers in this, it stars George C. Scott and Brad Dourif and others. This is, of course, the brilliant and perhaps underrated masterpiece of horror, The Exorcist III. So what I have here is, as I say, the Scream Factory release of The Exorcist III, which is described as being the collector's edition. And just taking off the slipcover here, I have the cover art flipped, so it has the older cover art. But this is a brilliant release, one of my favorite releases from Scream Factory for many reasons, because of course it has great supplements and it has a great background into the making of the films, and also a really neat approach to the vintage supplements and also the modern day produced supplements. It's a great release overall. But what makes this release one of my favorites is, and it was a big deal at the time of its release, this had two versions of the film. It had the theatrical version of the film, The Exorcist III, and it had what was purported to be something that was trying to be true in spirit to the director's cut of the film. It wasn't really the director's cut of the film in the sense that the footage that was relied upon for this director's cut was based off of, in many instances, VHS level quality dailies that were then used to fill in the gaps in order to fill out the map of what the director's cut would have looked like. And also it serves as a kind of hybrid between what the original director's cut intention was versus the outcome theatrical cut. So it's, in many respects, my understanding is that it's as close to a director's cut that we will get, again with some certain differences in quality that are of course noticeable, but we are still getting two distinct versions of this film, The Exorcist III, or Legion, which is the title given to the director's cut, which I think is a very interesting choice. It would have been such an interesting thing to see this version as its own theatrical release, but oh well, at least we have this version that we can rely upon when we explore and examine this film. Because before then, we didn't have this, right? And we were relying on a sort of rumor and legend about what could have been William Peter Blatty's ultimate vision for this film. So we were relying on that, and Mark Kermode and others were really championing trying to find this lost footage. And eventually, of course, we got what we have, which is really brilliant. And it serves as a nice reminder of what could have been versus what it actually was. And I should also be very clear on the record, I am a huge fan of the theatrical version of this film, Exorcist III. I am a huge fan of this. I will defend this film. I think it is a classic. I think it is so effective. It is chilling. Many of the scenes are I think, rendered very tastefully, especially dealing with subject matter and themes that are very violent and very disturbing, very chilling. I think the presentation is done in a very tasteful and elegant way. And there are many choices that are ultimately shown in the theatrical version that I think are still to this day utterly brilliant. And then we have the director's cut, which I think also is so chilling, macabre, and we get more of the Brad Dourif performance. We get more of a focus on the Kinderman character, the George C. Scott character, and the idea of a detective story, a mystery thriller that has its roots in some form or another with this notion of possession and the mystery that surrounds this, and the links to the past and a serial killing spree, and this sort of very dark and ominous and portentous type of story. We also get that theme, of course, in the ultimate theatrical release version of this film, but of course the theatrical version also has a kind of subplot involving an exorcism. Thus giving rise to the title The Exorcist III instead of the title Legion. I think people can debate which version they prefer, but I see strengths and weaknesses in both versions in their own particular way, which is to say that I think having both versions, and of course to the extent that we are able to see what the director's version could have been, I think having those two versions is really so fascinating, and it makes me just wonder and be curious about this film and be in awe of the spectacle and grandness, and also at the same time beautifully rendered quiet intimacy that this film portrays, to suggest not just the horror elements and the real deep disturbing elements of the dark side of human nature, which it does. It presents that so effectively. But also it presents this idea of absolution, of a kind of savior, the idea of friendship, and the idea of faith, and whether that faith is something of a belief or non-belief in something that is outside of human understanding, right? Or if it's a faith that is cemented in a belief or non-belief in the goodness of human nature. I think these themes are rendered so effectively, so poetically, and so beautifully in either version by William Peter Blatty and company, such that I think this film, The Exorcist III Legion, I think is one of those great works, really powerfully done, and still to this day is chilling, so scary, and yet so artistically and emotionally satisfying that it is, on the one hand, also a wonderful follow-up to the earlier films that have the name Exorcist in the title, especially the earlier film by William Friedkin, of course. But it also stands on its own as a thriller, mystery thriller, supernatural thriller, and horror film that is also very emotional and very impactful and very elegant and filled with a lot of class, even when it's dealing with some really deeply dark and disturbing things. This is one for the ages, my friends, in my opinion. This is The Exorcist III, or Legion. And I should say also, on a personal note, I remember this film, and when I first saw this film, or when I first got wind of the existence of this film, it was through what was like a VHS trailer on some rental that I made. And I think I first saw it when I was still living in the United Kingdom. And so this was in the late 80s. And so we have to remember that when I was living in the United Kingdom, I was also in love with the horror genre. And I was trying my best, despite the restrictions that were placed on titles with certificate ratings, etc. I was still doing my best to try to watch a lot of genre films and through television broadcasts and the like. But at the time, the film The Exorcist was just unavailable. You couldn't see The Exorcist. It was rendered unavailable. And so for the longest time, I was not able to see the film The Exorcist. I'd read about the film many times, of course, and it was a legend in my mind, of course. It built up because I read so much about it, and I read the novel, and I read all the stuff about the film that I could find. I tried to get all the pictures that I could find in books, etc. But again, living in the United Kingdom, I was unable to see The Exorcist at the time, so it just built up so much in my mind that I was so eager to watch it, but I never could. The only way at the time that I could see in a film itself something to do with The Exorcist was the little bit that occurred at the very start of the film The Exorcist II the Heretic, because there is some stuff that you can see that are essentially still photographs from certain key scenes of The Exorcist. And so that was, for the longest time, the only way for me to get a sense of what the actual film The Exorcist was, by essentially watching some moments or some fragments that were included in the sequel, The Exorcist II the Heretic, which is another film, by the way, that I'd love the opportunity to talk about in a separate video, and I'll try to make room for that maybe in the coming days. But so this is all to say that the legend of The Exorcist really built up in my mind during this time, and it was at this point in my life that I first saw the trailer for The Exorcist III, and I remember it was called by the voiceover, it was called Legion, The Exorcist III, and it had that whole thing with the steps. Do you dare walk down these steps again? And it had clips from the film, of course, edited together very stylishly. It had a small snippet, of course, of the famous theme music from The Exorcist, which also appears in a very key moment here in this film as well. But that really excited my mind and my conscience when I saw that trailer for the first time back in the late 80s. And so I was really pumped for this film to be released. And then eventually I was able to find the film or get the film or watch the film on a VHS rental. And I did. And I was I remember this was one of the most exciting moments in my VHS rental days to get that. And when I put it in the player and I saw it, I was really taken aback by this film and how it affected me. It affected me in ways that I wasn't expecting. I was expecting a kind of over-the-top violence, maybe gore-fest spectacle, special effects galore and the like. I didn't get that. I got something, at least for the most part anyway, I got something that was wholly different. It really went against my expectations. It went the more intimate, creepier route of the unseen and not showing the really horrible aspects, again, for the most part anyway, because there are some aspects of the theatrical cut that are really quite spectacular in terms of their special effects, but for the most part it was very much the way that certain acts were presented. It was very quiet and subdued, but still incredibly effective. And there were quirky aspects of the film itself that I thought were very odd at the time. You know, certain comic tones that were really heightened. Maybe the voiceover made those feelings of oddness augmented even further. There were certain quirky aspects to the mise-en-scène and the way that the story unfurled and the like. And so that really put me on edge. Not to mention, of course, the way that the atmosphere was really laid over in perhaps a very heavy way, but still somewhat imperceptible and yet perceptible way. I don't know if I'm explaining that very well, but my point is that there was something in the air that was tense. The music and the real almost ambiance type of music that was like growling or gurgling or some kind of demonic laughter, and then combined with this overly maybe light or frothy type of cheerful banter that was populating some parts of the film, really created this sense of unease, which I thought was brilliant. And growing up, becoming older and watching this film, I thought it became even more of a brilliant set of artistic choices. This idea of being placed on edge, not just by the horror, but also by the non-horror elements of the film, such that with every scene, there's something about it that is off. There's something that just pushes me off balance. Even the scenes with George C. Scott, and when he is trying to be funny or comic, there is a sense of a certain sense of surge of energy that only George C. Scott can give. And when we see those bursts of energy from George C. Scott, when he's talking either about the case and detective work, or when he's talking about his family and a carp, or anything in between, these bursts of energy also further help to throw me as a viewer, as a spectator, off balance, which I think is a brilliant move on the part of the filmmakers who are at play with this film, such that the effect of the film as we watch it, even in the scenes of the non-horror stuff, still resonate and have the potential to chill, and they all connect to the horror aspects of the film. And I thought this was a brilliant choice, absolutely brilliant. It reminded me also of another favorite of mine, and I love this film. I don't know if you've seen this. It's called The Ninth Configuration. And that's another film that I'd love the opportunity to talk about on this channel one of these days. But there are so many aspects of this film that reminded me, too, of that brilliant work, William Peter Blatty work, The Ninth Configuration, such that I find those two films to be kindred spirits. Of course, we have the connection between this film and The Exorcist, but also I think there's a really strong connection between this film and The Ninth Configuration, such that I would strongly recommend a viewing of The Ninth Configuration if you haven't seen it already, and if you are a fan of The Exorcist III. But my point is that there is a beautiful sense of comic timing that is both on and off. It serves the purpose of lightening the mood, but also serves a purpose of really creating a dense atmosphere of unease and doom, and a certain sense of unbalance, which serves the subject matter of the film perfectly, to a T, such that we have what I consider, as I say, to be a really brilliant work, a masterpiece of horror, something that is unsettling and very chilling to this day. I won't go into too much detail, but there are some scenes in this film where you watch them and just, oh my goodness, wow, chilling, absolutely chilling and shocking. Fantastic stuff. These are the stuff, these types of moments in horror are the stuff that really just make up a lot of my early cinematic days, such that I remember the first time I saw this film, and some moments of this film. Those of you who've seen the film, you know what I'm talking about. And to this day, I remember seeing it. It was like, where were you when you saw such and such, right? And I remember that feeling that I had when I saw this for the first time. It was like a bolt of lightning that stung and that really that clanged in my ears. Such that to this day I am in awe of this film, and I absolutely love it, and I will defend it to my dying days. This is the film The Exorcist III, or if you prefer the director's cut, Legion. In any event, my friends, it's wonderful to have these releases now made in the modern era for us who are fortunate enough to be able to watch and appreciate and examine and analyze, because again, these films really deserve it. They deserve our attention. And we might disagree about how we feel about certain films. This is, of course, no exception. I'm sure many people might not like this film, and I'm sure many other people will, and perhaps others will fall somewhere in between those two planes. Wherever you fall, my friends, in any event, I would love to hear what it is you have to say. So this is just my reminiscing, if you will, about this particular film, The Exorcist III, or Legion. And hopefully this will be the start of some more videos about other films of a similar nature. So once again, my friends, if you have any thoughts or comments about this, please feel free to let me know in the comment section below. I would love to hear what it is you have to say. And until we meet again, my friends, please be happy and healthy and well, and please keep on watching a lot of great movies. Thank you once again for your time, as always, my friends, and cheers.